I'm Erin Lawler-Patterson, the Goodness Chick. I'm an international speaker, life coach, author, and proud part of the Mental Health News Radio Network. Join me on the journey of empowering you to kick butt in life, not get kicked by life, addressing mental health, relationships, self-care, and giving back. So if you're an avid listener to Goodness Chicks podcast, I want to say thank you. If you'd love to be a part of helping the goodness keep going on a weekly basis, please hop on patreon.com/goodnesschick to find out how you can get on board through monthly contributions of either $5, $10, $20, and it's greatly appreciated, my friends. So today's episode, as I was watching the Democratic debates the other day, I couldn't help but wonder about how in the past few years, there's been so many people affected when it comes to politics. And I'm going to explain that. Strife, anxiety, stress amongst friends and family members, that's creating a divide that truly, man, it's heartbreaking at times. And there's not one clear answer, right? There's many facets that come along with this. And I'm not going to get into all of them because every single situation, everybody's relationship is individualized. But as we have the next 8 months ahead of us until November of 2021, we're going to have political ads, tweets, Instagram, Facebook, newspapers that are just covering politics 24/7. And it can be overwhelming for many of us. I know for those of you who are listening, you could be very passionate about the stance that you take, and I say good for you. What I also do say, though, depending on where you're at within relationships within your own life, friendships, coworkers, family members, is it causing a strife that is becoming irreversible? And what can be done about that? I think sometimes I'm pretty confident that our passions can absolutely fuel us, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to politics, and I'll say the last election, this election in particular, it has created a level of angst and with so many people, anger and division that to me it's heartbreaking. And I am not here to talk politics, which you could say, well, why are we bringing this up? But what I am here to talk about is kind of this crisis that we're in with our political passions evoking so much anger and hostility that it's literally tearing relationships apart. Now, I'm going to throw out some solutions or halfway points, if you will, what I'm going to kind of call and note as the political pause button, where we have now parents and kids at times barely talking, strain on marriages, ripping friendships apart. Now, where the heck do we go from here? Now, I do think sometimes whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, you're on the Bernie Sanders train, you're going for Trump, whatever it is, and I'm not interjecting any of my political passions or standings here, but what I am saying is something that I am very passionate about is kind of taking a step back and saying, where do we go from here within our relationships? I do believe that if we think that an individual, I want that person to pop in your head that maybe you're having a strain with right now, that they 100% agree or stand by every aspect that their candidate that they are going to be voting for is, it's usually inaccurate. And sometimes as human beings, we have a tendency to kind of clump that person in with that candidate, meaning that we're associating them with everything that that candidate stands for. And usually it's pretty inaccurate. When it comes down to it, the choice is ours with how we handle our relationships. We have a decision to make. Are we, I'll throw a parent out there in the mix or a sibling and saying, okay, Erin, my sibling and I have absolutely opposing stances. We're no longer talking. My mom and I can no longer, when we're on the phone, we used to talk daily and now it's maybe once a month. And every time we talk, it ends in a heated debate. Well, here's some strategies I'm going to throw at you. I'm not attempting to convert anybody from one political side or the other, because usually at this point, we're pretty confident in terms of what side of the political party we're going to be voting for, what candidate we have in mind. I will say this, we can choose in terms of what we soak in from other people, starting with social media. There's nothing wrong with many social media platforms, especially Facebook. You can actually hide somebody's information that just You're still friends with them on social media. You just don't get their information. I will say myself, I have friends, I even have family members that will post things that don't do anything positive for me. Okay, that will post in such a way that just gets me kind of angry and upset, and I don't understand it. They're not going to convert me. I'm not going to convert them because it's just not capable on social media, I believe, of having any kind of conversation that could create any kind of clarity or resolution, if you will, that if you're sitting in with somebody and having a cup of coffee, that could do. So for me, I've unfriended people. I've had discussions where I've really, I mean, it's uncomfortable and awkward, but I'm going to tell you, I just, it's something I've chosen to do, or I've hidden their information and they have no clue. But what I found as an individual internally, emotionally, if I'm seeing something from somebody that I care about that just conflicts absolutely with where I stand, I will either hide their information or I will unfriend them. And I still care about you, but right now, what you're posting is evoking nothing but anxiety and anger on my part, and that's not good for anybody. So the social media stance is absolutely something that you can take where, what do I want to do? And if that person talks to you about why did you unfriend me, you can have that discussion. Listen, I'm not here to get in an argument, but we have two opposing views, and everybody has a right to their view, but what is being divulged and what you're putting out there is just evoking things that trigger and make me go to a place that I just don't want to be. To me, that's a rational discussion we have. And when it comes to politics, a lot of times we can get very easily into the irrational zone. One of the things that I absolutely throw out there is no matter how passionate you are about your stance, your candidate, your vision, is using our words carefully, right? Ripping down parties with derogatory words, tweets, memes gets us nowhere. Absolutely gets us nowhere. I am somebody that believes in being a person of strong character, even when nobody is looking, because that's what character is all about. And what comes out of our mouths, there's things that I see on social media, there's things that I've had said to me in discussion that I absolutely vehemently disagree with. I am opposed to, but if I resort to name calling, it gets us nowhere. You're an idiot. How could you be so closed-minded? How could you feel this way? How could you? Listen, okay, that gets us nowhere. As human beings, we need to be able to talk about things. And there's certain topics that are pretty heated. Whatever movement it is, whether, it's Me Too, Black Lives Matter, what are we doing with open borders, the wall, whatever. I could go on and on and on. I believe that we should be able to have respectful conversations. I know so much of that kind of goes out the window sometimes, where we become taken over by our passions. And so we're driven a lot of times by personal experience, something that happened to us, something that we went through, and this is why we feel the way we do. And I say, you have a right to feel the way you do, but how do we interact with other people, especially those people within our inner circle and the people that we care about? Are we saying, okay, I'm so passionate about this, and you might be, I'm not faulting you, that, you know what, I'm willing to just no longer have a relationship with this person. That's something that we have to ask ourselves. And if you make that decision, that's your decision. I would say before that decision is finally made, maybe having that final discussion with that person on the phone, if that's possible, in person, usually over text. Nothing usually goes too well in the super positive direction when we try to express ourselves in text, because it can so easily be taken out of context. And when that decision has to be made, it's a big decision, and it can hurt feelings. It can leave gaping wounds, but it's a decision that if you feel like you have to make because this is toxic, that it's stepping away and making that decision. But here's what I'll ask you. When we're in the presence of somebody that we truly care about, that we love, that we have opposing views with, can ideas be shared without trying to change someone's mind? Can we stop talking and strengthening our listening skills? Because too often we could say, well, you are going to vote for this person and I'm voting for this person. Totally different people, or maybe they have similarities, but we're thinking about what we're going to say before that person has even finished completing their thought. And we're not really listening. And when it comes to things of a political matter, it can be heated. It could be uncomfortable. Man, it could be intense. it's a struggle for many of us, and myself included, about the power of listening and how it can be interjected into this. When is a good time to talk politics, really our belief systems, our passions, and when isn't? What is an environment that's conducive to that? How is timing that can impact how we react and how we respond? If it's, I'm stopping by, I've got to drop something off and make an offhand comment about something I saw on television today about what a politician said, is that conducive for discussion or for automatic somebody putting their defense up, and now we're in a debate? And now we've done nothing because you're, first of all, not convincing that person otherwise. We're looking for a debate. Well, no, I'm not, but you are, because you haven't allotted time, the proper environment for discussion. And if discussion can't be had, then it's saying, this is what I will say to you, that you love that person, you care about that person. Neither of you are really kind of going to be swayed about where you stand. Can we have what we call the political pause button? When we're together as a family, when we're together, there's people in a marriage that have totally opposing views. There's people that are siblings, family members, best friends. Can we choose to hit the political pause button? And that's something you have to ask yourself. Some people would say, absolutely not, I can't do that. Well, that's your decision. But can you, are you willing to? And if you are, that it's saying, listen, we're just going to, anytime we're together, we could talk about absolutely everything else, but we're just not going to go politics. On the phone, we're not going to go politics. And that's a decision that I think there's many out there that if they really thought about, if it could have the potential to salvage a relationship with a parent, with a sibling, with somebody they've known and cared about for 20, 30 years, that they'd be willing to make. And that's a big decision. I also will say that as we think about this when it comes to politics, as we can become passionate, as we can become intense, there's times that it's learning with the individual that we're exchanging this with that we are connected to emotionally, that sometimes it's just letting go of certain things in an argument. Because it's not about, to me, it's not about winning. And that's, I'm saying that's from me saying this, because sometimes when we take the time to kind of self-reflect a little bit, are we really listening? Are we going on the attack? I've had people say, yeah, I'm very open-minded, let's talk. And they're trying to convert me to, with what they think and their issues. And there's no rational explanation. There's no rational thinking on their end. And it just, what that does to the person who's on the receiving end is they put their defenses up because they're not being heard. And politics can do weird things to us. Issues that we're very passionate can do weird things to us. They can fuel us, and that's a beautiful thing. But they can also close us down where we're not willing to just at least listen. It's not about having you change how you feel, but it's about an element of being, am I willing to listen a little bit? Do I think I'm associating this person with this candidate that they believe every single thing, this issue that I'm passionate about, maybe they hold more in common with you about it than you realize, and maybe they don't. And I know I'm saying this very level-headedly, and you say, well, Aaron, I'd like you to meet such and such. This just isn't an option. Well, I'd like to say after this podcast, take a few minutes to think, are you underestimating them? And maybe you're not, but just take some time to think about it. Am I willing to salvage this relationship with this person? To say, hey, Bob, hey, Susie, can we just hit the political pause button? I love you. I care about you. I just don't want to go there, because all it does is have us end in anger, silence, anxiety, whatever emotion you want to attach to it. And nobody is gaining anything from it but heartache. And I believe we can choose to learn from one another if we choose. Although that can be really hard when we refuse to listen. It can be really hard when it comes to things that we're really severely passionate about. There's times that I try to have open discussions with people with things that I'm very passionate about, and it can be really hard when I absolutely don't agree with where they're coming from. I don't understand it, but I'll tell you, I will try my very best to try to listen. I'm not going to call them ignorant. I'm not going to call them names, because again, that just stokes the flame. And I believe it's about being human. We have a right. We live in a country where we have freedoms that too often we do take for granted. One of those is our ability to have different opinions, to be able to speak about them. But when we use negative terms, when we speak down to, and when we clump people together as one group, it gets us into hot water without even realizing it. And so I will say to you that if you are at a place like, you know what, I am going to, with this specific individual, begin to pursue and have this discussion about being in a state of political pause. Sometimes I'm going to tell you when we make that decision, it may be exchanging the inability to go deep in a discussion, right? Because often the worlds of politics and the issues that we're passionate about come hand in hand with things that just kind of flow through us. They're a part of us. And so sometimes it might mean it's a little shallower. We're not going to go to that depth. So what I'm saying is I'm giving you options and saying, let's look at this. I've seen so much divide in the past years it's heartbreaking. I've also watched so many times comments be made where we can lump people in because they stand for one thing, that now we're clumping them in to one particular party or one particular person, and we lose out. And so I'm not here to change anybody's mind. I'm not here to do anything other but attempt to evoke a little bit more empathy and compassion, less judgment, and maybe salvage a few relationships. And so there's a book I've read that's kind of shed a whole lot of light on a lot of my thinking, and one of those seriously being also politics. A book I'm actually going to be, I'm kind of really super excited about this, teaching a professional development with a number of teachers. And I'm excited about it. I'm super excited. And it's called How Happiness Happens by Max Lucado. I was actually typing and looking that up because I couldn't remember the name. But it really kind of breaks down how us as human beings can have the ability to deal with things a little bit more rationally, have more peace, be less inclined to kind of speak before we think about what we're going to say, and the power of kindness and serving others. And it's really just kind of based absolutely in the teaching of Jesus Christ. And as I read it, I kept thinking, man, I really gained a whole lot of this, not casting stones, serving others, being humble, watching what we say. And it had me reevaluate a lot of different things in terms of where I'm at, the people that I love in my life and that I have contrasting views with and get frustrated with sometimes, and learning how to think before I speak. And this relationship is something that I am going to fight for, that I do not believe and I do not have the same philosophies and outlook, and we have contrasting views or whatever it is, but I will say we're going to take a political pause. So I hope that kind of gives you some food for thought, things to mill around a little bit, because we are in some trying times, my friends. It's so easy to mudsling. It's so easy to clump people into one group. And it's a little bit more challenging to take a deep breath, to think, to pause and reflect a little bit and say, what do I want to do when it comes to the relationship with these certain individuals in my life? Choose wisely, be patient, and I'd say do what is best for your heart and to be able to use to grow, and because that's what life is about, growing, learning, and not allowing anger and hatred and malice to take the best of us, because you know what? That just claims another victim. Life's too short for that, my friends, and I'm wishing you an abundance in all this political climate of peace, love, and true goodness, my friends. If you enjoyed today's episode, there's a lot more encouragement and life-kicking strategies on goodnesschick.com. Have a great day, my friends.